Ouagadougou, 3:17 a.m. The sky is overcast. Lightning strikes the clouds like scars on a land that has already bled too much. In the darkness, unmarked cars slowly advance through the empty streets of Burkina Faso's capital. The silence of the city is broken only by the muffled sound of tires on wet asphalt. An operation is underway, but almost no one knows about it. Almost no one. In Burkina Faso, under the leadership of Ibrahim Traoré, the air has become thicker. Something is shifting beneath the surface. An invisible storm. A whisper runs through the alleys of West Africa. Foreign influence must fall. Within a compound discreetly surrounded by high concrete walls, CIA agents monitor data, track communications, and infiltrate. They have not come to help. They have come to observe, to influence, perhaps to control. What is about to happen is not in any official report. At the center of African power, a young military man watches silently from the balcony of his office. His gaze is steady. His name, Ibrahim Traoré, a name that is beginning to echo in the halls of history as a symbol of African awakening. This is not just a man. He is the symbol of a generation tired of submission. This is not just a soldier. He is the leader of a revolution against neo-colonialism, against power games, against the silent domination of foreign powers. This is not just politics. This is a war of shadows. This is the unseen battle for Africa's future. And tonight, the curtain rises on an act of courage that will make the world tremble. Because this morning, Ibrahim Traoré's Burkina Faso will make it clear the time for silence is over. Africa is rising. This is the awakening. The sun rises timidly over Ouagadougou. In a cold room inside the American Embassy compound, 3 men are discussing in low voices. One of them, tall in a grey jacket and with an arrogant look, is holding a folder with the words, Burkina Strategic Files. He doesn't know that his words will be remembered as a historic mistake. These kids think they run a country now, he mutters, smiling disdainfully. The young president to them is nothing more than a kid playing for power. Military leadership is a facade, says another, as he leafs through reports on anti-Western movements. Outside, 2 soldiers from Burkina Faso wait silently. One of them is being questioned disrespectfully by one of the agents. "You don't even have a real army," the man says in gruff English, giving him a look of superiority. The soldier, impassive, answers only with his gaze. They don't know who is behind those uniforms. They ignore the spirit that now inhabits the country, a spirit of resistance, of African independence, of quiet dignity. And in this silence, tension is born. Late in the afternoon, a meeting is scheduled. The American representatives demand to speak to the head of state, but they do so with contempt, as if they were about to educate a subordinate. They don't understand that this is no longer the same Burkina Faso. What they are about to face is not a fragile government, but a symbol of the new pan-Africanism, of youth who have decided to fight for a new destiny. They think they control the narrative, but they have not realized that the plot has already changed. The disrespect was not just verbal, it was historical, symbolic, steeped in an old colonial custom. A crooked look, a limp handshake, a forced smile. This is the modern face of neo-colonialism, not with weapons, but with veiled insults and a blind belief in one's own superiority. But the price of this contempt is about to be exacted, because Ibrahim Traoré is not watching in silence. He is preparing to act, and when he does, there is no doubt, Africa has woken up. The main hall of the presidential palace is silent. Heavy carpets muffle footsteps. Closed curtains create the atmosphere of a secret chamber. At 6 p.m. sharp, the 3 American agents are ushered into the room by silent officers. One of them tries to maintain a controlling tone. "Let's be clear, we're here to help stabilize West Africa." But his voice sounds more like a veiled threat. They sit down, unsure of who will receive them. One of them discreetly takes out his cell phone, as if he were still in control. Then the door opens. And what enters is not a diplomat. It is not a bureaucrat. It is a man in camouflage uniform, eyes fixed, expression firm, body erect. It is Ibrahim Traoré. Young, yes, but his presence weighs more than the years of career of anyone in that. A room. The Americans freeze for a second. They expected a puppet. They found a lion, a symbol of the African Revolution, an echo of Thomas Sankara, a reflection of the continent's rising youth, youth in power, carrying centuries of wounded. "Dignity, you wanted to talk?" Traoré says, breaking the silence with a low but cutting voice. "Then listen." The air in the room changes. The agent's confidence begins to melt. He confronts them with data, movements, files, interceptions. He talks about interference, espionage, political sabotage. He talks about what they deny, about what the world pretends not to see. He talks about the truth about Africa. "This is not just a matter of sovereignty," he says. "This is about the soul of Africa." And then with a simple gesture, doors open. Armed soldiers enter, not to intimidate, but to show that he is not alone. Cameras are turned on, microphones activated. The world will see, the world will hear. The revolutionary leader reveals his face to those who tried to treat him as a subordinate. They came to control. They have been unmasked. He does not shout. He does not threaten. He simply stands his ground, because when the truth is with you, silence is stronger than any weapon. The faces of the CIA agents begin to change. Sweat runs down their temples. The game they once seemed to dominate is now falling apart before their eyes. Ibrahim Traoré, with the calm of a strategist and the gaze of a leader who knows the history of his land, does not shout, does not accuse with hatred, he reveals with facts. "We intercepted your communications. We know the infiltration and plans. We know the funding channels," he says, placing documents stamped with confidential seals on the table. "The farce is over. Burkina Faso is no longer your playground," says Traoré, a simple but definitive sentence. With it, he stands up. In his gesture, there is the weight of generations. The soldiers who were in the background approach. The American agents try to maintain their pose, but they no longer have any words. One of them tries to argue, "This will have consequences." Traoré stares at him for several seconds and responds coldly, "It already had. You're leaving tonight." There were no screams. There was no violence. Just one order: get out of Burkina Faso territory immediately. As they are escorted out of the palace, the agents look around as if searching for some invisible support. But there is no one. The capital is awake. The city lights shine like watchful eyes. African unity is no longer a utopia. It is a reality under construction, made with decisions like this. The people on the streets do not know it yet, but the country took a giant step that night, a step towards Africa rising, a non-negotiable affirmation of sovereignty. In a few minutes, diplomatic vehicles leave the palace for the airport. No press, no conference, no rehearsed speeches. The plane takes off under the dark African sky, a sky that night seems freer. In silence, without fireworks, without headlines, Burkina Faso, led by Ibrahim Traoré, made history. And history was written, not with weapons, but with courage. Africa is rising. This is the awakening. This is Ibrahim Traoré's revolution. The news of the expulsion of CIA agents from Burkina Faso is spreading like wildfire on international networks. In Washington, tense faces appear before the cameras, trying to explain the inexplicable. In Paris, the silence is more revealing than any diplomatic note. In Abuja, Dakar, Bamako, Luanda, the murmur is different. He did it. An African leader had the courage to confront the greatest power in the world without asking permission. Traoré's act echoes beyond borders. He has become a symbol of African resistance. Young Africans in universities and on the streets are starting to share videos, speeches, excerpts of Traoré's speech. Hashtags are trending. Nyosh Africa Rising, Ibrahim Traoré, Pan-Africanism. Young people recognize something rare in him, a leader who speaks with the truth in his eyes. This is not theater. This is not populism. This is clarity. This is a confrontation with neo-colonialism disguised as diplomacy. And this stance, this boldness, is beginning to inspire not only the activists, but also the masses who had been asleep. In West African newsrooms, editors are reassessing the tone of their articles. The military boy is now called a revolutionary leader. Experts discuss the new era of African politics. Some fear reprisals. Others celebrate what they call the beginning of a second independence. The people, however, do not wait for analysis. The people understand, and they feel. There is a new scent in the air. It is not fear, it is pride, a feeling that has long been buried under the dust of submission. And in the middle of it all, Traoré remains silent. He does not give interviews. He does not seek the spotlight, because it was not an act of vanity. It was a declaration of principles, a step towards real, concrete, lived African independence. The world is watching. But now, the center of the narrative is elsewhere. For the first time in a long time, Africa speaks for itself. And the voice comes from Burkina Faso. The next morning, Ibrahim Traoré walks alone through the palace corridors. Without an entourage, without a press, without an audience. Royal power does not need to be displayed. He carries the weight of his decision, but he shows no signs of fatigue. His steps are calm, his face serene. Outside, the country is slowly waking up, unaware that a new page of history has been written, and even without fanfare, everyone feels it. Something has changed. The truth about Africa is finally being told, not with microphones, but with actions. In his office, an old advisor watches him silently. "They didn't expect this," he says, breaking the mood with a low voice. Traoré just shakes his head. He is not seeking revenge. He does not want war, but he will no longer accept being treated as a spectator of his own land. The silence he maintains is that of someone who knows he is playing a bigger game, a game that involves generations, memories and deep scars left by colonialism. But now the pieces are changing. The people are starting to notice, not because they saw it on the screens, but because they felt it on the streets. Respect for the country, trust in the army, hope for tomorrow. Everything seems different. In the markets, in the villages, in the schools, in the fields. Parents proudly tell their children about what they heard, that the president sent away the men of the empire, that Burkina Faso, a small land in the eyes of the world, rose with the strength of a giant, that Africa's awakening began there, in that silent dawn, this silence, that of a people taking a deep breath after decades of invisible oppression, is more powerful than 1,000 words. Because when the oppressed no longer shout, but simply walk with their heads held high, the world feels the impact. Ibrahim Traoré did not address the world, but when he expelled the CIA from his land, he said it all. Africa is rising. This is the awakening. This is Ibrahim Traoré's revolution. Traoré's decision shines a light in the darkness of many African nations. From Dakar to Kinshasa, young people are beginning to ask themselves, what if it is possible? What if we too can forge a path without outside interference? What if Africa can decide its own destiny with leaders who look like us, speak like us, live what we live? One man's act became a seed, and that seed is already beginning to sprout in the hearts of a restless generation. This generation is not made up only of soldiers. It is made up of teachers, farmers, students, mothers, engineers and artists. These are men and women who carry the flame of the African Revolution without ever taking up arms. They want a voice. They want respect. They want real freedom. Ibrahim Traoré has become the symbol of something greater than himself, the sign that youth can and must take the reins of African reconstruction. This is youth in power. Meanwhile, the traditional speeches at international conferences are beginning to ring hollow. How can we talk about humanitarian aid when what is required is respect for sovereignty? How can we propose cooperation when the goal has always been control? Young people no longer believe in promises from outside. They want dignity, and that can only be built from within. Africa's future will not be exported. It will be built with African hands. In every country where hopes seem buried, eyes are now turning to little Burkina Faso. Traoré's name is circulated as a code of courage, as a reminder that times have changed. Because African politics no longer needs to be a rigged game. With leaders like him, a new type of politics emerges, firm, rooted, independent. The continent awakens, and awakens young people. Burkina Faso returns to its daily rhythm, but something invisible has changed forever. Ibrahim Traoré's gesture was not just political. It was symbolic. It was spiritual. In a land marked by invasions, exploitation, and manipulation, someone has finally said enough, with dignity, with strategy, with firmness. The silent gesture of expelling the CIA becomes a banner, a profound message to all African nations. Independence is not an event, it is an ongoing process. True African freedom will not be achieved with diplomatic fetes or fragile treaties. It will be achieved with moral courage, with leaders willing to face giants, and with peoples aware of their worth. Africa's future is in the hands of those who are not afraid of the truth. And this truth is clear. Neo-colonialism is still a reality, but no longer a sentence. Africa has awakened, and with it the power to choose its own path. Ibrahim Traoré walks this path, not as a perfect hero, but as a man who dared. And this boldness connects him to the great names of African history. With each step, he inspires new leaders, new ideas, new possibilities. He did not just expel foreign agents. He initiated a movement to rescue of culture, of sovereignty, of pride. History may judge him in many ways, but one thing is certain: he broke the cycle of submission. Africa is rising. This is the awakening. This is Ibrahim Traoré's revolution, and it is only just beginning.